Fight!
Welcome to Kick Punch. So excited to have you here for this tutorial series. As you can see on your screen, this is what we're going to be making. This is a little concept that I've sketched up of, I think it's called a creeper, and it's from the video game called Minecraft. You may have heard of it. In my day, creepers were something totally else entirely, but I guess in today's day and age, this is what they mean. They're like kind of like a weird sort of swamp thing, kind of planty mass that tries to kill you. That's what my kids tell me anyways. So anyways, thanks again for joining me. This is an complete intro to Zbrush. So if you don't know anything about Zbrush, this video series is for you. I'm hoping to be able to kind of bang this out in 4 videos in about 45 minutes apiece. And if you would like to get access to this concept art, I'll put a link in the description below where you can just head over to Google Drive and download that image, and you can kind of just follow right along. So now, if you'll allow me to kind of shamelessly plug my fancy pants new website, this is kind of the stuff that I have on it. I have some digital downloads as well as just some of my characters that I've done, as well as some physical prints that I have kind of just sitting on my workbench that I'm selling. And then also there's all of my tutorials are kind of consolidated here on this page. And there's also a way to get in touch with me. So that's exciting. And then also there's a few links up here to like social media. You can come over here and check out my Instagram. I'm on all the socials, even on the TikTok. So also under the same name, just Kick Punched. But anyways, yes, head over to my website and just like, comment, and subscribe on the channel. And if you're happy with my instruction, yeah, just stick with me. So anyways, just wanted to kind of show you what's going on, and let's just jump right into Zbrush. So I'll get Zbrush open up here. I'm going to click on Maya, I think on accident. But anyways, I think I clicked on Zbrush too. So that's what happens when you get older. Your clicks get less precise. So get ready for that, kids. All right, so this is vanilla Zbrush. This is just exactly what you're going to see. I'm using Zbrush 2023.2.2, and when it loads up, it's going to give you this menu that kind of gives you some suggestions as to things you want to start with. You can click hide for now, and the only difference I have on my UI is I've changed my little button highlights to a greenish, like teal kind of look. That's the only difference that you're going to have from your Zbrush to mine. So intentionally, for instruction purposes, I wanted you to have something that was familiar to you. So what we're going to do is just click on this little lightbox tool button right here, and that'll bring up kind of the same menu that you saw earlier. And we can choose to load up different objects. And in this case, because we're doing Minecraft style characters, we'll load up a cube.zpr. Just double click on that guy. And it's going to load that up for you. And right away, this could be scary. There's a lot of stuff going on here in Zbrush, and just rest assured that it's not just scary for you, it's kind of scary for even seasoned 3D artists like myself. I've been working in the film industry for a lot of years, and diving into this, I think it's probably close to 20 years ago now, was kind of scary, kind of a beast. But just stick it out, and it's going to be such a powerful tool for you. And you might be wondering how I'm rotating around, and the way that I'm doing that is just by right-clicking. Okay, just right-clicking on the screen, we'll rotate around. And say I wanted to pan or slide things around on the screen, you just hold Alt plus right click. So Alt plus right click, practice doing that. Right click rotates. And then if I want to zoom, this gets a little bit tricky, but it just takes a little bit of practice. If I want to zoom, you just hold Alt like you're going to pan, Alt plus right click. And then as you are dragging left to right or up and down, let go of Alt and continue to drag left to right, and you'll pan. And that's easily the trickiest, probably one of the trickiest parts of Zbrush. Just that right there. If you can figure that out, so it's just Alt rotates, Alt plus right click pans, and then Alt plus right click, and as you're dragging, let go of Alt and continue to drag left to right or up and down, and you'll zoom in. And if something gets kind of off screen over here, you can just hit F as in Frank on your keyboard, and it'll frame it up. Or you can come over here and just click this button right here, and it'll just frame that up for you. So that's kind of the basics of navigation. If you get lost too, you can also use this interesting little head up here to navigate around to the different orthographic 3D views. So you can kind of see right here, this is helpful because I'm viewing our profile, which is hard to see on a basic cube. This is the front. And the other thing you'll notice is that if my mouse is mouse over this side, you can see that little red dot on the left-hand side as well. That's because I have symmetry enabled. So if I were to left-click and drag on this cube, and then rotate around to the side by right-clicking, you'll see it did it on that side as well. So if you would like to turn that off, you can just hit X on your keyboard as an X-ray, and it'll turn off symmetry. But remember, this is kind of a gotcha. If you this can catch you if you've been doing a lot of work on this side of your model and you forget to have that turned off. There's always workarounds and ways to fix that, but just keep that in mind that X turns on and off your symmetry, and that little red dot is the indicator that that is turned on. And so we can sculpt, left-click on our model, and work with symmetry, doing half the work, which is amazing. And which brings me to the brushes in general. So yeah, right now we're just using a standard brush, which is up here in the left-hand corner. Okay, so it's just a basic brush. And right now you can see if I left-click on this cube, it'll pop out. If I want to go in, you can just hold Alt and left-click. So Alt goes in, and then just left-clicking goes out. And let's say I want to adjust the, first of all, let's undo by hitting Control-Z. And you'll notice as I hit Control-Z, this little tick right here goes from all the way to the left. And this is your undo history. So if I was to left-click and drag on this guy, drag to the right, it'll go back through my history. If I drag to the left, it'll go all the way back earlier. And so now if I left-click on this model, you just have to realize that you have just lost all those remaining ticks, right? Because you've kind of started a new branch in your history. And I'm going to Control-Z and undo that guy. And but where I was going was, say I want to adjust my draw size. Okay, you can either come up here and drag from left to right, and that'll make a huge brush for you. Undo that, or you can drag all the way to the left, and that'll make it nice, fine little brush. Just undo that, hitting Control-Z. And let's say I want to maybe not have to come all the way up here, but I want to remain in my viewport. If you hit S in Sierra, it'll bring up that same draw size dealio right there wherever your cursor is in the viewport. So I prefer to use that method, but you can just come up here and just adjust it right there. And then just left click and drag on that guy. Have some fun. Maybe write your name. And then practice holding Alt, going in. And just have some fun with it. Another way, if say I want to adjust the little inner red circle right there, that's kind of the influence of the brush right there where that is. And the outer red circle is kind of the fall off of the brush. So I want to adjust the focal shift is the proper terminology for that. I can just left click and drag this and see that inner circle get bigger and smaller. So if I get smaller, it's going to make like kind of a more pinched kind of effect. And if I go larger, it's going to be just a giant kind of sphere kind of deal. So I honestly rarely play with this. I don't play with it very often, but that's also an option to you. And which brings me to our intensity of our brush. If we just crank this, it's going to do as the name implies, just kind of really push that intensity for us. And holding Alt, so that's one that I do use frequently, is adjusting the intensity. And you can change your defaults to Z sub if you would rather have it go in by just left clicking. So now if I left click with Z sub, it's just going to go in, and now I have to hold Alt to have that pop out. I usually just leave that at default, so that my default is Z add or popping out. So and some of these other things we'll probably cover in a later tutorial series. This is RGB, so you could actually just paint with an actual color if you'd like. And you'll notice that it's not sculpting when I have that. But if I turn on Z add, it will then sculpt and paint at the same time. So that's kind of fun too. This tutorial is specifically more for 3D printing, so we're not really interested in color per se. So I'm going to turn off RGB. And then just moving right along over here, right to left, if I were to click on this guy, you'll notice it brings up my transform gizmo, okay? And so it has all the typical values or typical procedures you can with any other transform gizmo. So these arrows are for move, so you can click on that green arrow and X, Y, and Z, And then the inner circles are to actually rotate. And this white circle is just to rotate based on the camera perspective. So just play around with that a little bit. And then the other thing is to move. This guy's to move. All right, and because I have symmetry on, if I move this way, it's actually going to stretch, right? So I might want to turn off symmetry by hitting X and then do my move, and then it'll move over there, okay? And then the other thing is this yellow square on the inside is for scale, and these squares are for scale on those different axes. Axes is well said. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that, and that's basically the transform gizmo. And let's say I want to get out of that, right? Because I want to sculpt, and I can't sculpt because you're in transform gizmo mode. You can hit Q on your keyboard. So clicking on these buttons, so that's let's see, ERT or WER on your keyboard is what switches between move, scale, and rotate. And then hitting Q will just switch you back to brush mode, so you can actually just brush on your model. So you will be using this quite a bit, this move, scale, rotate stuff, so just be aware of that. And then I think that's about it to cover along the top menu. And let's dive into our brushes, which is a whole other kind of beast. So if you're to click on this button over here, it's going to just fire hose you with a million different brushes here. And it's awesome because there's some really, really cool brushes in here, but also it's super daunting. I get that. So just keep in mind that during your ZBrush stay, you're going to use 5 or 6 brushes consistently, and then interspersed with some of these fun ones, as you kind of play around. So what I like to do is what I'll do is I'll just kind of click through the ones that I like to use and that I use commonly. These are brushes that most artists commonly use. So snake hook is a good one, and it gives you this little area. You can just hit skip on that. And now if I go to snake hook and then I left click and drag on this guy, let's turn off our RGB and just leave on Z add, it pulls out this interesting little tendril, like this tentacle kind of thing. And I love this brush. This brush is awesome for just moving large forms around. It's really, really, really nice. So that's one that I use. And then obviously the standard brush is a common one that I use, the one we were just on. Clay buildup is another big one. And this is kind of more akin to like a traditional sculpture kind of brush where you're carving, and that one's a really good one too. So I'd keep an eye on that one. And then one other huge benefit is, so let's switch over to our standard brush. So a typical workflow within 3D is to push your details, accentuate the details, and then smooth back. So if I left click and do this and like just really pull this guy out too much, and I want to smooth it back or kind of subdue that a little bit, which is very, very common. If you hold Shift on your keyboard, your cursor will switch to a blue cursor, and that means you're in smooth mode. So you'll look over here, you'll see that your brush switched from standard to smooth. So keep holding Shift and then left clicking, and it'll smooth this guy out. You're going to use this a lot, so just remember this and stick with it. This is just a very, very common workflow. Accentuate the details, and then holding Shift, just smooth that back. And you can set your shift brush, your backup brush, what I like to call it, to whatever brush you want, but I prefer to leave it at the smooth brush because like I said, you're going to use that commonly. Another brush is, I'm just going to undo this real quick. Another brush that I like to use is the Damien standard brush, also known as the Dam standard brush. Now let's say, man, there's a lot of brushes here. It's going to take me 20 minutes to find it. Let's say let's try another one. Let's try the inflate brush. So inflate starts with I, so we'll hit I on our keyboard. It's going to like parse out all the other non-I brushes and just give you everything that starts with I. And then it makes it easier for you to find the brushes. So now I can see, oh, here's the inflate brush. And if you look up here in the upper left corner, it'll say N. So now if I hit N on my keyboard, it'll then switch me to the inflate brush, which is another very common brush that I like to use. So just keep that in your repertoire. I'm going to undo, go back to my brushes, and say, okay, now I just want to like maybe move things around or move the, let's try pinch. So P for pinch. So if I hit P on my keyboard, you'll see that we can easily find pinch now, and that's I. So P and then I, and now I'm on the pinch brush. And another awesome thing with this is you can come up here to your brushes, right? And you can actually dock your brushes on the left-hand side over here. And the reason I've done that is because as I've gone through these brushes, it sort of keeps those brushes in your history. And I'll show you an example. So if I come up here to a move topological brush, you'll then bring it over here to my brush history. All right. And the reason I show you that is because you can actually set these brushes to your hotkeys, whatever hotkey you want on your keyboard, which is going to make you exponentially faster. So one thing I recommend is, like, for example, maybe I want the standard brush to be number 1 on my keyboard. So in order to do that, if you come over here, mouse over your standard brush, holding Control plus Alt and then left click, now you have a prompt up on the top of the screen that says press any key combination to assign a custom hotkey. So now whatever key you push right now is going to be the new standard brush. So in this case, I would put 1 on my keyboard. All right. And so I have all of my favorite brushes are basically 1 through 9 on my keyboard. So I have, for example, if I hit 1 on my keyboard, I have the standard brush. If I hit 2, it's the damn standard brush. If I hit 3, it's clay buildup. 4, snake hook. So again, mouse over the brush, hold Control Alt and then left click, and now hit whatever key combination you want in order to assign that to your hotkey. So pretty simple. And then you can just kind of close out of your brushes. You don't have to have this menu up. Just click that little button in the upper right corner, and then click on these arrows on the left to give us back our screen space. Okay, so that's a lot to cover, and I know for sure that you're going to want to probably rewind and go back or slow me down. I hope I didn't move too quickly. Those are the very basics of ZBrush. And then the last thing I wanted to cover real quickly is the tool menu over here on the right hand side. And this is a menu that you're going to use frequently. A lot of these things you're going to use. So let's just go up top to bottom. If I click on Subtool, this is showing our fancy pants cube right here, okay, that we have. So we've created a cube, and let's say we want to add another model. All right, so ZBrush has a bunch of models that you can just kind of load in whenever. You can come down here to Append, and it's going to bring you up some options. And so I would just grab like the sphere, okay. And let's change our color over here back to white, so we don't have the weird red that we were painting with earlier. And the cube is inside or the sphere is inside our cube, right? So now I can click it, between these two subtools right here, and it's only going to, and if I left click with my snake hook brush, it's only going to edit that active subtool. The other one is safe, okay? And also it has its own history per subtool, which is very, very powerful. So we can come back here, we can modify our cube, we can come over here, we can modify our sphere, and you notice I'm coming over here and clicking, but to me, that's kind of a headache. I just want to switch between these easily in the viewport, and you can do that by Alt left clicking on each model to easily switch between those in the viewport. You'll notice that I'm kind of switching between each of those. And so that's just a way to kind of just show you, it's kind of like a layer system in a sense that you can switch between models within a Z tool, okay? And which reminds me, you can save a few different file types within ZBrush. So you can do a tool, which is just the collection of these guys right here, okay? And this does not include your history. This just includes your subtools and anything that you've done within the tool palette. So if there's subdivision levels, I prefer to save tools, okay? But you can come over here to File and save an actual document, and that will save a much larger file size that has all of your undo history. Some people prefer to do this. Personally, I've had my ZProj files kind of break on me when they get up to like 1.5 gigs, 2 gigs, because your files will get pretty large, especially as you add subdivision levels and geometry, and those get more complicated. They get pretty large even when you're saving a tool. So I would just kind of stay away from this for now until the guys at Maxon kind of figure that out and make that a little more stable. I rarely have Z tools get corrupted on me, so I save these guys, and the way you can do that is just see here, you can just go over to Save As, and then just pick wherever you are. Let's say I'm in. I haven't even started this. Let's do Minecraft and then Creeper, and then I like to make like a little folder called 1_Z for ZBrush, and then I'll click into that guy, and then I'll name it Creeper 001 ZTL. All right. So now when I load that up, it's going to load up all of my subtools and all of my subdivisions and all of my work within these tools, okay? But we are saved. That's all that you need to know for now. And let's say I want to, if I alt left click onto my cube, I want to see maybe my subdivision level, my wireframe, which is very common for 3D artists to see what their wireframe looks like or their topology. If I hit Shift F as in Frank, you can see that you can see my poly frame, my wireframe. And let's come over here to click on geometry. You'll notice that I have this SDiv, this is subdivisions, and I have 5 subdivisions already on this cube, which to me is a little much to start with. So I'm going to come over here and drag from right to left. You'll see that my poly count went down, and you can see my lower poly here, okay, my low poly count. Okay, if I drag back up, let's just go ahead and hit delete higher, and then I can show you how to use subdivisions. So if I were to sculpt on this guy now, you'll see, oh, I only have like a few polygons to work with, right? I don't have a lot of density in my geo to be able to detail. So I'm going to undo that, and I want to add those subdivision levels, and the way that you can do that is either by clicking on this button here, okay, and it'll start to give you the polygons you want to work with, or what I prefer to do is hit Control D as in delta, and just keep holding Control and hitting D, and I'm adding subdivision levels. And the way to step down that is to hit Shift D, Shift delta, and it'll go down to your lower subdivision levels. And the way to go back up is just hitting D without Shift. So Shift D goes down, D goes up, and then Control D adds new. All right. So that's kind of the basics of subdivisions and how to control that and how to modify that. I think I'm going to go down to 3 and hit delete higher and delete lower, because I think that's probably looking good for. I want my edges to be a little bit rounded. That might be a little bit too much, but we'll figure it out. You can also, because I deleted my lower, one cool button here is this reconstruct subdivision levels. You can click on that and it'll give you back your lower subdivision levels. So that's really cool. So a lot of the things in ZBrush that you feel like might be destructive, and they might be destructive in other 3D softwares, are actually fine. You can figure out ways around almost anything in ZBrush if you just are willing to learn different approaches. So I'm fine for now. I'm going to delete lower. This other stuff I'm going to just bypass for now. I don't think it's going to be applicable for a beginner series. I'm going to try to just keep this real simple. So we've got our subtools, our geometry figured out, and honestly, I think for now the only other thing, you can go to deformation, and you can see all these things that you can do. You can slide inflate, and you can see that guy inflates out. And they just do different procedures. Inflate balloon is kind of fun. Squeeze does some interesting things. I use taper a lot, so you can change, like, you can turn off the different axes and then turn on like the Y, and you can taper that. You know, that would be kind of a cool shaped head for our creeper. So we'll probably use that, but otherwise, you know, these are all just standard. There's a size, rotate, you can offset, mirror, and then if we come back to geometry, mirror and weld is a good one too, because we might accidentally have our symmetry turned off, so we might have to just bring those details back. We can use, and I'll show you how that all works. But that's really the basics. Like, I think with all of that information, we're good to start diving into modeling. I'm at about 23 minutes, so I'm going to take about 15 minutes to get our character just very basically kind of blocked out, and then we'll wrap it up. So, all right, come back to our subtool. Let's turn off our sphere. Actually, let's just delete the sphere. We don't need that guy, because there's no spheres in Minecraft, right? Let's get these guys out of here. Get out of here, you know? All right, so I've got my starting cube, and I would say if we Alt-Tab back to our concept, it looks kind of like his head, huh? So we've got basically his head shape, and I love to complicate things by adding all these other shapes. That's what I love. I love to make my life harder. But I also think this character is going to become ours, you know, which is what we're trying to do. We want to make this thing our own kind of concept here. So this is good for the head shape. I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, and I think I am going to come down to deformation and leave taper on Y, and I'm going to taper that head just a little bit out that direction. And now I want to use this same cube, and let's just make all the other shapes. Let's block out the simple large forms of our character. And there's another fancy way to do that. Other than having to append another object, we can actually just hold Control and left click and drag on our arrow down. And you're gonna actually make another object, but you'll notice it didn't make another subtool. So we're still living within the same subtool, but I have separate objects, which is totally doable. But one is darker and one is lighter. And what it's done is it's actually masked off our old one. So if I were to left click and drag on that guy, I can't move it. But if I were to left click and drag down here, I can move this guy just fine. And that's just kind of like a default of ZBrush. That's kind of the way it works, which is kind of cool and helpful in some ways when you're modeling. But and we'll just leave this guy masked for now. And I'm gonna grab my scale tool and get our gizmo here, and we're gonna make the neck of our character. So I'm going to drag in because it's certainly, if I alt tab back, it's just a smaller diameter, smaller size, if you will. I guess diameter isn't applicable for a cube, but and then I'm just going to grab this square in the Y direction and just scale that guy up. So I'm using the inner yellow circle to scale on all X, Y, Z, and then I'm using the green cube to scale up and the green arrow to move up into place. So let's just continue to just kind of get this guy into the right shape here. And then I'm going to, let's take a look at our, should we add like a little pelvis area? I guess there's probably not a little pelvis area. Let's say you want to see your concept a little bit better and not have to alt tab back and forth, okay? One way to do that is you can come up here to see through and you can drag from left to right. And you still have ZBrush as your active window. So I'm still rotating around, I can still sculpt, I can still do things with that being see-through. And that works pretty well too. I think my favorite option is to just have my concept up on another monitor, because then you always can just easily look right over. But if you really have to get precise, this is the way to go. So you just have, see-through on, and you can come over here to Document, down here to Zap Link Properties, and you can click any one of these buttons. It's just going to create a camera angle for you, okay? And what that means is, okay, now I've rotated over here, my camera's off now. How do I don't want to get all handsy and just kind of try to line it up. I just want it to snap back. Now if you come back to Document and click on that button that you just clicked, it'll snap it right back into the original camera place position. So there is that option. Personally, I don't need to be super precise with this character, so I'm just going to have my concept up on a second monitor. I know that's not always feasible for everybody, though. That's great. So I'm just going to turn this back to not transparent. And you could also, you can import in a texture too, if you'd like to bring your actual reference in. And you can actually bring that into your viewport too, and just kind of have that up on the side over here and model that way too, if you'd like. There's so many ways to do things in ZBrush. I'm trying to parse through what the most effective is, and everyone has their own preference. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is make the legs. And for this, I think I'm going to just append a cube, come over here, and come down to my new cube ZTL and turn on solo mode to get everything else out of the way. If you click this button, everything's still there. But I just kind of want it out of the way, right? And this topology is okay. I don't like how everything kind of merges together at this one vert here in the middle. So I'm gonna actually come over here to Geometry and come down here to Z-Remesher, and then I'm gonna click the same button, and that means it's gonna keep my poly count the same. And I'm gonna hit Z-Remesh and see what that does for me. Now it didn't really work, right? It kind of did this weird stuff. And so a way to kind of keep things precise, you can come down here to polygroups and then do a group by normal. And then it added these different colors to my different faces of my model. And what that does is that affords you this really interesting control. So like if I hit Shift F and turn off my poly frame, you'll notice those colors don't stick. It's just because they've been assigned a polygroup. And what's cool about that is if I Control Shift left click on a point on that polygroup, I can hide all my other polygroups and just work on this area, and you will come out, there'll be a number of situations where working with polygroups is advantageous. So I highly recommend kind of figuring out this workflow. And you can create a poly group out of anything. I can hold Control and paint a mask on my model, and then hit Control W, and it'll poly group that mask. And now if I Control left click on that, it's just a way to have further control over your model. So I know this sounds complicated right now, but it's poly groups are awesome. Just start to kind of just wrap your brain around. It just allows you to isolate certain parts of your model easily. And you will use this in your ZBrush workflow, and it's going to enable you. So just keep that in the back pocket for now. But for now, I'm just going to do group by normals. So now it's made all the different colors. And now if I come back to geometry and then Z-remesher, and this time I'm going to turn on keep groups. Okay, so it's going to try and maintain these different colors when I Z-remesh, and it's going to keep the poly count the same. So let's see what it does. So you'll notice now in this case, it's kept it basically a perfect cube, just like it was, but it's gotten rid of that weird welded vert, you know. So now everything's exactly as I want. So I'm going to come back here and do another taper in the Y direction. Yeah, I'm just going to taper that guy kind of like a pyramid a little bit, and then I'm going to use my scale and use my green cube there in the middle to scale that guy up. And you could come up here too and do another Z-remesh just for fun, to just make all of your polygons kind of like uniform and not stretchy after you've run your scale, which is what I just did. And then you can hit Control D on your keyboard to further subdivide that guy. And now it obviously doesn't look like a leg at this point. So let's move that guy and get that into place by using the white arrows, using our move tool. We'll just come down here, scale it, and then we could try a fun thing. Ooh, this might be terrible. Well, let's just try a bend. Let's see what we can do with a bend. So this is just bending in the Z direction. Let's try S bend. Oh, I like S bend better, I think. So let's go back to our concept and see what I'm doing there. Looks like I still have these interesting angles, and I want to keep that. So I don't want a perfect. Let's just do bend for now. And we'll just bend that just a little bit, and then we'll rotate this direction. And we'll scale it in, and we'll come down here and get that guy into place. Okay. And you'll notice too that after we've rotated, our gizmo has been rotated too. And let's say I want to reset this gizmo. I can click on this lock right here, and then click on this reset orientation button, and it'll reset, kind of freeze my transforms if you're coming from traditional 3D software. And then just kind of get that guy back into place. And then I'm going to hold Control and drag on the, whoops, looks like I have subdivision levels. So you can't do some functions if you have subdivisions. And moving or cloning is something you can't do. So I'm just going to come back here to maybe down to the second subdivision, delete lower, delete higher, and now holding Control, I'm going to click on that blue arrow and slide that guy back, and then use the green circle to kind of get that into place. All right, so now we've got two legs, but we obviously know that our goober, whatever this guy's called, our creeper, sorry, has four legs. So I'm going to come back to geometry and come to modify topology, and then mirror and weld on X. If I click that button, it's going to snap those beautiful legs on over. And let's turn back on our symmetry to make sure that our dots are on. And I want to clean up these kind of jagged, stretched polygons a little bit. And so I'm just going to hold Shift and smooth those real subtly. And if you would like to, you could use radial symmetry, which sounds super scary, or it sounds like a cool tattoo. Go to transform, and you can use hit R, and then switch it over to Y, and then hit R, and then switch this guy to 4. So we want 4 points on Y. And now you'll look and see you can. I'm only showing this because radial symmetry is really, really powerful on certain models. So now I only have to make that adjustment to the one knee, holding smooth, Shift, smooth those guys out. And I might have not had everything perfectly mirrored because, remember I like manually kind of move this one back. So if you hit mirror and weld on X, you can also do a mirror and weld on Z. and it'll actually make that perfectly symmetrical on both the X and Z. And then I can hold shift and then smooth there. Maybe that didn't work. Transpose master, oops, transform. Activate symmetry, and then use posable symmetry. Kind of works, kind of didn't. Well, anyways, it was worth a shot teaching you that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work too well. I think I got out of symmetry in one sense, and now it's kind of working, but kind of not. But if it's not, you can just do a mirror and weld, and you can get all those just kind of mirrored back to where you were. But you just have to remember what your master angle was, like the one where you started, and just understand that it's going to mirror that across to whatever. So yeah, that one's the main one. So I want to make my adjustments on this guy, and that's going to carry across as I mirror and weld. The point is, I mean, I guess I'm kind of lazy. And I come from a traditional sculpture background where I had to hand sculpt every single thing all the time. And I love symmetry. I don't really mind that little crease that I got in the legs, so let's keep that for now. And I'm just smoothing a little to kind of maintain our bevel. Let's take another look though at our concept and see how things are looking. Looks like the neck might be a little bit longer, and then if I alt left click back over to this guy, in fact, I think I might have tapered the wrong direction, so we'll come back to the deformation and do a taper in Y and actually go back the other direction a little bit. All right, cool. So now we have our basic shape of our character, and then we obviously need a base for him to stand on. And so we're going to append a new cube and then bring this cube down into place. Scale, get that guy into position. I'm a big fan of the bases, like a nice fancy base. I think that really helps with things. So I recommend that. And let's say we don't want to go through our whole Z remesh process, but we want to get our edges to be rounder. If I hit Control D and subdivide, and we go over to deformation, we can go to inflate, and we can actually inflate that out, and it'll help to round our edges. So I want everything to be cubes, but I also want it to be rounder. And then I like that, but I don't like that everything is rounded. I want this bottom edge to be flat. And so there's a few ways you could do that. One of the best ways I think is to just use clip curve. And the way that you can do that is if like when you hold shift, you have a backup brush. You also have this down here. You have the strokes, and you have all these different options over here. And so if I hold Control Shift, I have these select options. And what that means is if I hold Control Shift and then left click and drag, it'll drag a green rectangle. And if I hold Control Shift and drag and then hold Alt as well, so I'm holding Control Shift and Alt, it makes it a hidden selection. So if I do that over my model, I can just, let's Alt left click onto our neck area. And then I can just see this guy. So it'll hide all the other geo, right? But if I Control Shift and Alt, it'll hide that. Okay, so this is just an interesting way to hide and reveal your model to kind of isolate areas to work on, and you will use that quite a bit. So this is just for select, but we want to actually use a fancy brush to slice the bottom of that, like we were talking about. And the reason I brought up Control Shift is because this is how you get access to it. So if you hold Control Shift, you can come over here and click on this guy, the brush, and you have all these other options right here available. And I usually use maybe 2 or 3 of these, just a heads up. I use clip curve a lot, I use knife curve a lot, and I use slice curves. So for now, we use clip curve, and now if I hold Control Shift, it'll switch to the clip curve. Let's say I want to get back to my select stuff. So just hold Control Shift and then go to Select Rect, and now that's my default. So Control Shift, clip curve is what we want. And now if I come down here to my base model, I'll left click on this guy and hold Control Shift, left click and drag, you'll see this interesting line with a gradient. And the gradient direction is the direction it's going to slice. So if I did that, it'll slice that model like so. And we want to just slice the bottom. So holding Control Shift, you'll notice that it kind of snaps for you, which is nice. If you let go of Control Shift, you'll get rid of that snap, so you have a little more control. But in this case, I want to slice on that axis, so I'm just going to leave Control Shift and then left click and drag, and slice along the bottom of that guy. Okay. So now I've just sliced the bottom of that base, which is a-okay. Very cool. And maybe I want to slice the top of the head a little bit too. You know, get that guy a little more squared up. Overall, I think this is a very good like kind of stopping point. Our character's obviously so basic, and we have a lot of work to do. But I think we got through a good amount of, you know, the basics of ZBrush, the basic UI, and just another thing I wanted to show you real quickly is there's two different kind of functions, or two different states of ZBrush. They have like a 2D state, which is when you hit T on your keyboard and hit switch, it's going to switch to 2D mode. And now if I drag this brush, this tool out, it'll just continue to drag this guy out like that, and that's crazy. And we don't want that. So in order to get around that, I'm just going to undo and make sure that I'm in 3D mode by hitting T as in tango on my keyboard. And sorry, I'm going to left click and drag my character out and then hit T. And you'll notice that my other guy's still there, which is kind of weird. And that's because he's saved in the document as a 2D edition. So if we come over here to document and go click on new document and hit no, and then left click and drag, we'll drag our character out, and then be sure to hit T to switch to 3D mode. Okay, so just remember that that's a thing that needs to happen sometimes. If your character's not drawing out or you can't navigate around, just make sure you hit T and you'll switch to 3D mode. That's kind of a gotcha in ZBrush that happens frequently. Anyway, so I think that's basically it. I'm going to save my subtool, and they added some new buttons here in the recent versions where you can hit save next and it'll actually version up your file. You'll notice that if I go to save as, it actually made a version 2 for me, which is really cool. And just keep in mind that any functions that you create in the tool, like any subdivision levels, are going to be saved in this tool, so you're good to go. So just hit save there, and then we covered pretty much all the navigation. In the next video, we'll cover, you know, further detailing, and we'll really dive in and like really beautify this thing and make it look fun and cool and interesting. And we'll also explore different types of meshes, like Dynamesh, for example, because we don't need to stay in clean topology when we're moving into 3D printing, and Dynamesh is a very powerful tool to give us the detail we need in the spots that we need. So we'll learn these new terms in the next video, but if you're happy with the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and do let me know what I can do better in the comments, and head over to the website, check out what I got going over there, and follow me on the socials and all those fun things. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in the next video.